introduce to you Christine Canning. She is our moderator for tonight. She has a handful of questions, some of which you'll be asking yourself, others she's going to be reading for you, and she will be introducing our two speakers tonight.
Okay. Sorry. Do you want me to move the microphone near us, or?
You can do that now. Okay. And then when we go into the question and answer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me back. Last time I saw you was 2016 when I was running for Senate. And I really am glad you both sides agreed for me to be the moderator. So tonight, this is what I'm going to ask of you. I live in Lanesboro. And as you know, we went through this whole process a few years ago. And it's very passionate for some people. It can affect your housing. Some of you have children in the schools. But at the end of the day, we must remember we are a community. And we have to learn to support one another. And there are times where you are going to want to jump up and down, throw your chair, scream out, and I'm going to ask you not to. Okay? Otherwise, I'm going to have Kelly Pizzey remove you. I know, be afraid, very, very afraid. So, tonight we have Tom and Bill. Both are going to be presenting the pro and the con. I want you to know I am neutral. In the interest of disclosure, my daughter did swim for Waconia even though she attended Mount Greylock, and I'm a licensed superintendent. I'm also, for the other side, have no relative in Dalton, and I have no say in any of this vote. I'm just here to make sure your questions and your answers are given, okay? You can raise your hand if questions after we finish the ones that are written, if something comes to mind, and we'll discuss it, okay? I would ask you from the Lanesboro meeting to please refrain from profanity or any violence, because it did happen, and as you know from the Berkshire Eagle, people were removed. So I would ask you to please, if you like tonight, my name was Chris Canning. If you did not like tonight, this is Tom and this is Bill. I gotta protect them. All right, I'm gonna have them introduce themselves and let you know where they stand and what they're here for. If you don't mind tonight, I probably will sit a little bit more. I have diabetes and my foot has not been in the best of shape. Okay, so please forgive me if I don't stand the whole time. We didn't do the coin toss. Does either one of you want to be first? Okay, you don't mind? All right, then you got first.
It's only because he heard that they'll lose interest when he goes.
Ah!
Can you hear me back there without this microphone?
I think it's better just in case someone has a hearing
Yeah.
disability.
Tell me what to do already.
I am. That's one thing of why they picked me on bossy.
I use it.
Yeah. Oh, much better, Tom.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I'd like to thank Kelly for organizing this, and I know there were some other backers of this
Gotta speak
a
into
little
it.
while ago.
Now.
A little rocky road getting to this day.
You gotta hold it up.
2 inches away.
A whole-
Near your face.
I have 3 questions. Okay?
Better.
I'd like to thank Ms. Stocking, Ms. Christine Canning, it's the hyphenated name.
Oh, just Canning is fine.
For doing this for us. And Bill, I'd like to thank Bill for presenting the other side. I'll be honest with you, I'm here to support the school and do all I can to convince you to give it serious consideration. I'm not naive to the financial issues here. With about a month to go to the vote, the bottom line seems to be coming out, and that is, what is it for the increase in the tax rate? We've been around to the select boards in all the towns but one. We'll be there pretty soon. Some of the towns twice. We've had the info sessions from the second round of that, and most of the questions appear to be about finance. So I'm hoping that tonight I can get a few questions that will ask about the educational plan and the advantages of a new school. But I don't want anybody here to think that I'm loaded with money and I just don't care about an increase in my taxes. That's not true. The people on our school building committee are all taxpayers except for the 2 students. Nobody wants to do anything that really will increase the taxes. My pitch is, if you will, is that after a long time of studying and evaluating this situation, we're at the point where we're at right now. We're asking you to support a new school plan. We've looked at a lot of options, and the one that is best for us, short and long haul, is the one that we're proposing. And it is a lot of money. I really think with some people, if we took that down 1 or 2 million, it'd still be a lot of money. Because it isn't a good time to be asking for money. I'd actually be rather on the other side, asking not to spend money. But we have to spend money to get what we want. And I hope you have faith in the school building committee. So on behalf of them and the students now who might go to a new school and way down the road, thank you all for coming.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
They need you to introduce
I thought I was introduced. My name is Tom Callahan, lifelong resident. I've been associated with the schools since 1971. I started teaching right here in that honorable old building. And I've taught in all 3 levels, elementary, middle school, before it was junior high, high school. I served as principal. I was a football coach, class advisor. I did a lot of things. I retired in '06 and I've been subbing consistently since. So what that means is I've been very fortunate. Because at my age, 73, I would not be looking for trouble. I go to Wacona to sub, and I am blessed. Something good is going on there, or I wouldn't be there, trust me. So again, others, I'm not the oldest sub, by the way. We're very blessed to have that school, and we want to keep it going. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Dressane. I'm the Finance Committee Chair. I'm also a retired DOT employee. And I'd like to thank everyone, I know Tom has as well, for coming tonight.
Speaking of
Hopefully-
microphone.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear me? Not can hear you? Hopefully. We're in the right spot. I wanted tonight hopefully present the town, how the town views this expenditure that we're about to undertake, or maybe not undertake. Depends on how everyone votes. This, one thing I can't stress to everyone is to get out and vote for this. This is a deal that we all need to think about, we all need to work at, and we all need to figure out. This forum is an excellent forum for people to ask questions. Tom and I and Kelly sat down last Thursday. We came up with this format because our feeling was that we wanted to hear questions from you, the taxpayers and the voters in the town of Dalton. And if there's others from other towns within the district, they can still even ask questions. This isn't this is a rather informal for us tonight. So I hope everyone's got some great questions for us. I spent a lot of time today getting numbers. That's kind of what I do with the Finance Committee, and I believe the entire committee is here this evening. So that kind of says a lot for what we do. And let's bring on the questions. Sounds like a good thing. Thank you.
And I've read some of them, they're very good. Okay, so let's start with the first question. Could we explore the restructuring of the student population? For example, moving 6th and 7th graders to elementary schools, making Nesicus an 8th to 12th grade, thereby eliminating a need for a new school and realizing the efficiencies in the current operating budget through this consolidation. And because it is slanted more to one side than the other, I would like to also ask for you to talk about why there is that need for a new school, or not that need, as this one suggests. So Tom, would you like to take this first?
Sure. Thank you. Good question. Very good question. 2014, the school committee created a subcommittee to study this very matter of combining schools, moving kids around. We were at that for 2 years. It was also the year of the so-called NESDEC report.
Tom, back to the mic.
Am I doing it wrong now?
No, I want you to hold the mic closer to your mouth, so they can hear you.
Get a podium and hang on or something.
Talk to the back of the class, Tom.
This is what we studied. We studied virtually every configuration that we could think of. One of the main ones was moving kids into Nescas. This came up last night, by the way, at the info session up in Windsor. What we found, oh, by the way, how much time do we have to answer this?
Tom, when we think
I
you
need
need
to
to
have
shut
it
up,
out.
I'm gonna let you know.
I'm not gonna get it all out. But what we found when we looked at moving the high school into Nescas and then adding on to it was that that school was not built to meet high school standards. Nothing about Nescas met NEAS standards. NEAS is the New England Association of Secondary Schools and Colleges that sets a lot of rules and regulations, though I will admit it's losing some of its clout to DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, kind of taking over. But we found out that would not work. We tried virtually every option of moving kids around, and we did find that there were reasons to close other schools. But the reasons weren't valid enough, apparently, for the school committee to take action. One reason I can give you is that there was not a good fallout after the closing of Cummington School. And that wasn't unusual, because some of us who were educators in this district back then, like Mr. Cicchetti, remembers the closing of Windsor School, a huge fuss. Next was Peru. Washington Elementary was terrible, a terrible situation. And then Cummington. It happens. And it probably will happen because the NESDEC report gave similar population figures going down the road about 10 years that the state did that same year, 2014. Population is dwindling. Fastest growing part of the population in all 32 towns in this county, in 2 cities, are the seniors. And so that doesn't bode well for looking at population. Coney has 550 students in it right now. When the 6th grade is a senior, they will be the first class to go in the proposed Hope for new school as seniors. And the 3rd grader freshmen will be down almost 100 kids. But right now, those other schools were slated to be closed for the reason I just cited. One was enough for a while. What I would submit down the road, if the population doesn't shift up, they'll have to close another school. Middle school won't cut it as a high school.
Thank you so much.
I don't happen to know a lot about that subject. It's a great question, but considering that question, there's a committee that's presently looking at consolidating all of the schools in Berkshire County and coming up with 3 alternatives for high schools. That's coming down the road whether we like it or not. And I hate to admit it, I kind of looked it up on the GPS, and Wacona Regional is the easternmost school within this county. So I'm not sure if it would be feasible for them to bring the students to Wacona Regional. So I don't know where that's gonna go. That's years off from now, but there are these things, and there's many things that all of us within the schools, all of us within the town, that we have to be thinking about all of the time. And hopefully we can all have the wisdom and come up with the right decisions. Thank you.
Well, Tom has asked for a rebuttal, but I kind of have a question that would go in for both of you. Listening to what both of you said, what is the liability, because we're a litigating society and school districts have to have high riders, what's the liability of a child or a teacher being endangered currently in the school, or liability to the town with not having the building, or with having the building? Could you, I don't know if you know that answer, but that also could be very costly.
Let me clarify this. This is not a rebuttal, though. It would not be fair to use that word. On that plan, on the 3 large regionals, This is known as a collaborative school plan. It's a plan that is common in rural parts of southern states and some out in the west. A rural county might have, geographically speaking, you can picture Berkshire County, a northern Berkshire regional, a central Berkshire regional, and a southern Berkshire regional. And so the plan Bill alluded to was to combine schools in those areas, put them all into one big building. That's a very good idea. There's no question about that. That committee that's now, I'd say 4 or 5 years old, is starting to break up. Some key people who were part of it have left. No action's been taken. Here's the reasons. There's no model in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts public school system that organizes that kind of countywide, huge, or just larger, for efficiency's sake, regional high schools. If this were to happen in Berkshire County, there'd probably be 4. Something like Taconic, Stressing Vocational, or McKeon. But that plan has no model for it in the state. There's nobody that is going past the organizing stage. And second, there's no financial model that these people who are talking about that can look at to see what the stakes would be. And the third reason I'll give is, and part of it's why we're here, all the building going on in Berkshire County for new schools virtually puts that idea to bed. Because how in the world are we going to get 3 new buildings or combine a couple of buildings to create a northern, central, and southern regional, Berkshire Regional High School? It isn't practical. So if it ever is to happen, most of us will be a long time gone. And again, this is not a rebuttal. It's more an update on that collaborative plan to regionalize the regions in Berkshire County.
But is the school safe right now as it is, if they were to keep the school?
I don't think there's any compromise on that. Christina, that's a good question. Safety?
Yes,
General word safety. We're on that subject all the time. I've got some current material here from the 2013 NEASC report that questions the safety at Wacona. In my tenure as principal, we went through one of those 10-year evaluations, and they say the same thing, only they stress it a little more from 13 to 03, from 03 to 13. Safety is a huge concern. This school building committee has spent many hours talking about safety with the architects and the general manager representing the main construction company for this proposed new school. Safety is a big thing, and it isn't cheap. I'm not kidding anybody there. It isn't cheap, and it's a long way from what the current building has. And if we can get to the audience down the road here, I would have Jason Dion speak to that later. He's our property and schools equipment manager of the district, a huge task. And every time I have a question in that regard, he has an answer for me right away.
Okay. Bill says it's fine to go on to the next question, which is, if the school project is voted down, what are the alternatives? And I'll let you go first, Bill. How's that? Well, it's a very real possibility. What are the alternatives?
If indeed, for the school system, I'm not sure exactly what the alternatives. I've read a few that they've posted online. They're very viable. My opinion is that they're very viable alternatives. The do nothing, I have to agree, we don't have the ability to do nothing. We do have to fix our school. In my opinion, we should have been fixing our school for the past 30 years. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, and I've been around here my entire life, and for whatever reason, we've chosen through various administrations to not update our schools. And that's something that I'm not too keen on. We hear of all these new programs. Did they happen yesterday? Probably not. Did they happen 10 years ago? Who knows? I don't know. But I do know that we should have been, and when I say updating our building, we've known, I was on a building needs committee 10 years ago. We knew things were needed within the science labs back then. We did something. We put in some new labs, or some new equipment in the labs. We fixed a few things. We did it for some relatively short money then. I passed that, and that was a lot of legwork on committee members. We spent, in fact, I think Mrs. Huger, was it? Yeah, so we spent a lot of time getting that put together. And we were able to get donations and what have you from all over the place to get that so that we didn't have to buy portable science labs. But as I understand, the new school has many new science labs, 5 or 4, I'm not positive on the number. But my question is, can we build it within the building we have, or can we not? And I think our committee here will be able to more than answer that question. But I think if we don't do it, we're going to have to do something. When we do indeed do something, that'll come before the voters as well, just like it's coming now. If those smaller, I suppose, deals or whatever they are come through, we'll have to go through our debt exclusions and all of our overrides and whatever else we have to do. And if a question comes up, I'll be able to dive into that a little bit further for everyone.
Would you like to address this?
Sure. Thank you. I might want to go over and triple these committees now, so.
No, I'm just giving you the next question's a doozy.
Bill made a good point. It was a long time going along, and there was not a lot done to recover. No question about it. One of the reasons is that the Nescus came along there, and that was a 20-year bond. That was paid last year. So Nescus is out as a debt, but it took 20 years to pay that off. And the Beckett Washington Elementary School, this payment is due in 2025. So that came along, so we couldn't do too much to recover. There's 4 capital projects left that'll be paid off, 22, 23. I won't list them. The total is $222,463. But I'm substantiating why possibly the school committees at the time did not put money into recovery. But all the major facets of the building's infrastructure have been cited in 2 NEASC reports. When we commissioned this committee and we decided on the construction company, and they sent a team of their experts to, thank you, sorry about that. They sent a team of experts out to evaluate the property from taking soil samples, everything. What they found was that in the next 5 to 10 years, this is a repeat of what Bill mentioned, things that had to be done. From the roof, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, name it, to 10 basic areas of the building, totaling $45.6 million should be done, should have been done. And it really should be done in the next 5 to 10 years. $46 million. That's one of the things that caused us to look at the very first plan was a renovation. By the time renovation is over, 3 years, some kids will have spent 3/4 of their tenure in high school with construction going on. All this stuff doesn't get done in the summer. Just picture the campus with construction roads built. Remember, that campus was a swamp before it was a school. It was a goat farm, very wet. Probably wouldn't pass the perk test today. You drive on it in late spring and it's soft. They'd have to build gravel roads to hold the equipment and places to hold the supplies, a depot. And they have to move kids around. We have to get more portables. None of that's reimbursable by the state, by the way. So we could come up with a rehab job, if you will, for far less, but we might not get a cent in reimbursement toward it. Or we could do an addition on a rental. Now the cost is coming between $1 and $2 million from the new. I'm pretty sure if I was out there And somebody else in my place said, we can do a rehab and addition job for $2 million less than a new one, I would question, why don't you just go to new, bite the bullet, and get it all done for the next generation of students? So we had that dilemma to worry about. We've already trimmed $1 million off this. We told the architects and project manager in June of last year, after we decided on the schematic design. $8 million is not going to do it. I just hope you know that we're aware of finances. As is Bill, who's got a great handle on town finances, there's no question about it. And I'm trying to point out from the school angle why some things didn't get done over the last quarter century at the high school. Oh, the last reason is this. One thing those NEAS reports always cited is the maintenance, the high level of maintenance in that old building. That's kept it going. Please note, it's the oldest building regional in the county. I think there might be another one that old, and it's had the least done to it. That's a tribute right there to the maintenance.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, in case some of you aren't aware about what this means in this question. It says the feasibility study was supposed to give us options. For those of you who are unaware, often districts will ask for an outside third party to do feasibility studies. In some districts, they're actually read, and in others, they collect dust. You know, it's just a protocol that gets done. So you guys will have to talk to that, because I don't know what your district did with it. But what were the options, and what happened to the option for regionalization? And since we sort of answered that, I want to also ask, what options are you giving also if the building does not go through for computerized learning, VHS learning, online learning, which now, as we know in Massachusetts, we have the virtual high school. So maybe both of you could talk to that. It is a way to save money at the same time. May not be feasible for Wacona in Essex.
See, it seems to me that the questions are stacked against me a little bit this evening. I spent all kinds of time today trying to figure out about what's going on with the town finances, and seem to be speaking more about...
He jumped the gun, he hasn't seen question 3.
Fair enough. Well, at any rate, I did indeed read the feasibility study online today. Spent about 4 hours going through it. I was starting to get blind after 3.5 hours. I know we spent a lot of money, $800,000 or $850,000 on this feasibility study. We are indeed using that. I can't take, so when the school decides to say, well, we're going to lose that money. Well, to be honest with you, even if we don't use that money toward the new school, we won't lose it, because we have this huge document that tells us what direction to head in. They give us priorities within that document. Quite honestly, it's a very good document for us to use. I saw some places in there that tell me that we can fix things as well. And that's where I'm kind of coming from, is we have to look at it. I think if it does indeed, if it is indeed not voted favorably, we need to take that feasibility and use it, and really work with it, and make that document work for us in many ways. Thank you.
Feasibility study was $850,000. And this has been mentioned before, but in case you haven't heard it yet, is that on top? Should this go through? There's a bond out for that. That is included. Paying that back is included in the budget for the new building. All right. If it doesn't get voted in, now this isn't our doing. We go by the rules of the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And I want to say this, I'm saying this at every presentation. If I were not part of this building committee, I would have the usual suspicion about all the bureaucracy, their inflexibility, and a lot of other things. I'm telling you, we had to be educated as to this process. We went down and we met every one of these people. They're a very autonomous group, part of the Department of Treasury in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. By the way, their funding comes from 1 penny from everything that's got a sales tax on it in the Commonwealth. And they are very strict about where the money goes. Their projects, of course, run into the millions, as you know by now. They have billions on loan out there. We don't get many concessions from this group. That's important to know. We've been arguing with them from the get-go. 2 years ago, in a phone conference, we were arguing about if this one were to be, about the size of the auditorium and a couple of other things. They have models that fit every school district's population. But the feasibility study does have plans. Bill made a good point there. That's on record. Every document that we've covered, every minute of the meeting is available. But their rule says you will present one option for a vote. And if it gets defeated, you'll be able to vote on that again in 120 days. Why don't they present options? We would like to have options. Nobody would like to have been able to present options than us. We have spent countless hours and a lot of them frustrating hours getting to this point. We don't call them up and say, can you just change that for us because things are tight up there? No. So we had to come up with one design. And so we went with this one for the reasons I've already given. That's why. So if we don't get it, we vote one more time, or we could. If that's a failure, then we are out of the running. We don't wait to get back in line. If you know anyone in Monument Mountain, they're going through that. Because the citizens in that town a few years ago voted it down. Very similar scenario as this one. A lot of infighting in town. I haven't really seen that in our district. I don't think we will. But now they're trying to get back on board. They've got to reapply. And in case you hadn't heard this, it's no exaggeration. It took us 10 years to get in line. 10 years. That was 12 years ago, because we've been organized for 2 years now. 2.5 years, actually. So we had to get down there and listen to these people. They visited us, and there's not a lot of sway with them. So they basically say, learn our way, and that's what you're going to have to deal with. After being involved, I can see why. Projects are pretty big. Just yell at me.
Oh, I will, Tom. Okay, I just want to give you an insight, because our school district did take the new building, about the pros and the cons, which will lead us into the next question. He is correct in saying that they really did give you a one model. And we did vote it in, and it has cost our taxes to be very high in Lanesboro. Some people have not been able to pay them, and it has caused some issues. On the other hand, when the school was built, it now offers and affords the children educational opportunities that weren't there before, especially now that most things are going computerized and with robotics. The issues with Mount Greylock included 96 lockers being short, lunches having to be rerouted because there weren't enough tables, because sometimes the buildings they build look pretty but are not functional, okay? On the other hand, what it offers in computer and technology, and studies have shown children who go into new schools, the productivity level excels. So we have to look at, there are pros and there are cons. With that said, I'm going to now bring a question to Bill. So I want you to all look at his serious face, because in a minute it's going to smile. He thought the questions were stacked against him. Then watch Tom's face, because he's not going to smile. All right.
Don't read it.
If the high school was just renovated, what would the assistance amount from the federal government or the state government or other resources be?
He's gonna smile because that's his question.
Oh, was it your question? Okay, well, let me just,
Have it here.
okay, grab the Tom, but Tom, we'll wait a minute.
Bill's got to have a take on this, I would do, I was sitting over there. We don't know what the reimbursement rate would be if we had a rental. Is that, am I on track here?
If they just gave you assistance money, just fix up the building, how much is the federal and state government going to give you?
Sir. Yeah, I thought I covered that when I listed the 12 things that have been cited as need be done in the next 5 to 10 years. That's not a building, it's not a renovation. No rental for that. Other funds available? I have no idea. $45.6 million bond for 10 items. They're long overdue. And along the way, the 10th one is contingencies. What if you go into the walls that are not insulated and you find, as has been projected to us, there's rust down there, no cellar, as we all know. All the pipes, plumbing, under those floors, not too far down. Bottom of steel studs, not far from moisture. A contingency fund would go away in a moment once they opened up those walls. But I can't stress it enough. We do not know money for those projects.
You're saying no reimbursement.
No reimbursement.
Yeah.
Based on the
Wait, you can't ask them a question yet.
I'm cheating, yes, no?
Our reimbursement opportunities now, not in the future.
Okay, so the reimbursement option is now, Bill definitely, I can see him eating at the bullet here to rebut, but just a question too, if your population is dwindling, would it be also cheaper for the town to either make a tuition agreement like New Ashford and Hancock does with the Northern City Schools? Or is this something where you think you have the money or could get the money for the repairs?
That's kind of an interesting point. It goes back to the tail end of that goes back to an earlier question of changing the regionalization. There is kind of a thought, I suppose, if you wanted to, considering the number of students, the availability of other schools in our general proximity, is it possible to relocate our students to another school versus building a new one, and what would those costs be? I don't think anyone's looked at that. I don't necessarily like the idea at all, but that is something that would have to be thought of. If we're not thinking about it, then we're probably remiss in our duties to some degree. As for the reimbursement portion of this question, I happen to go on the MSBA website, and some of the things that are needed do have funds available if they're applied for. I've seen them. I see the numbers. I don't know what the percentages are. And that goes back to our feasibility study. We would have to use the feasibility study, the documentation that's there. We have to look at the projects that we have to undertake. We may have to take them on one project at a time or take them on all at once. I don't know how that would work. The school building committee would have to decide on that if this thing does indeed fail. But that's something that has to be thought about. We will have to pay something. Whatever that is quite frankly a roll of the dice. When it comes down to heating systems, I've heard about redoing heating systems or putting new heating systems in, that the federal government pays for the feasibility study, and then they pay a large portion of putting the heating system in. These are only things I've heard. And that's both the EPA and the Department of Agriculture. And that relates to biomass. So those are some of the things that would have to be reviewed. They would have to be looked at. It's going to be a larger task for the community than to simply build a new school. And that may very well be an alternative that we do indeed have to go to. But this is why we're here tonight, is to have this kind of a pro and a con. And like I said, I've read the MSBA, I went down there. They actually, the MSBA has a best practice on maintenance of your buildings that requires things like work orders for making repairs in your schools. Do we do requests for proposals to remodel some locker rooms that over 10 years ago we looked at? They were falling apart then, they're falling apart now, they were falling apart when I went to school there. What was it, 40 years ago? 35? I mean, that's when I went there, and they were having troubles then. So we're with this whole conversation that's gone full circle. And my general opinion is that there's going to be a lot more sleeves rolled up before this is over with, and there's going to be a lot more work ahead of us, pro or con. It doesn't matter which way this goes, but we are going to have some work ahead of us. Thank you.
The next three questions have pretty much overlapped what has been answered, but I'm just gonna review them quickly for you. Can we be reconsidered after next year to reevaluate costs and projects and maybe resubmit to Massachusetts again for consideration? My understanding is no. No, so that is a no. What has the maintenance program been for the 5 years on the schools? Clearly, we've answered, there hasn't been much maintenance done on the schools and a lot to be done. This is one that we have not fully answered. What are non-reimbursable expenses? Do you know what the non-reimbursable expenses will be?
Of course, I would like to
And
clarify.
including that, it says a no vote does not prevent repairs, is that correct? Or non-reimbursable expenses, can you talk to either one of those? I'll give you the question, it's loaded. It's a loaded question, I like it.
Non-reimbursable expenses. The reimbursement rate is just under 60%, as you know. And that's giving 43 per, they're giving us about 43% of the whole bill. But there's a long list of these areas and items that don't get reimbursed. Let me give you one. I'll talk space. For example, the auditorium that I alluded to, that's the best example. We would like to have 550 seats in it, and that's more than the population of the school. We take into consideration staff, et cetera, and Wacona is very well known for some amazing assemblies they have there, notably Senior Assembly and Disability, bringing a lot of people. So our first argument, as I said a few minutes ago, was with them over why we think Wacona should have a large auditorium. In the end, this is what they said. Some of that space seating you want is non-reimbursable. They will pay, I'm going out on a limb saying about 3/4 of the expenses of the auditorium. Close, 3/4. Why? They won't pay for the rest. This is their rule. If you want it and we accept it, you pay for it. They will not pay for more than 8% of the total cost for things outside on the site. So we're lucky with this job, if it goes through, that there won't be a lot of disruption outside. We'll in fact gain a whole field out of it, but there's plenty of places and things that are on that list. That applies to every single school in the Commonwealth. There are no exceptions. It's not because we're out here. They have their rules. So you have to look at what you're going to get and what you think you can have the community support. But we're doing pretty good. Remember, we're not paying $72 million for this. We're getting a lot of money from the state for reimbursable costs. They can't pay for everything.
Yeah, it's okay, because Bill's very excited about the next question, I can tell. But before we go, just so you know, for reimbursable, at Mount Greylock, they had a fight up until the end where my kids were delayed going into school this year. My daughter's a senior, she didn't have to make up the days, she was very happy. However, everyone else was not happy because they held up who would pay for the building permits. And until each one was paid, who was gonna pay for it, it became a war of words, and schools couldn't open, wouldn't give them temporary permits. So I suggest you go back to the Eagle and make sure everything is clarified. Secondly, when they put in the ramps, as they tell you, like the school building, be very specific with them, because the constructor or the construction people who put them in didn't make them ADA compliable. We had to have them taken out and put in ourselves. So these are things that you really need to iron out by looking what happened to other school districts. They are fixable. However, Bill, this one's for you. What will the impact be to town government if reimbursement is less and not debt excluded?
Give me that
This is the part I spent a large share of today working on, besides reading these guys. I worked most of the day on this, believe it or not.
Bill, hold the mic up a little bit more.
First and foremost, if indeed this were to pass, even though I'm on the con side of this thing, if indeed it does pass, I will have to look towards, I have to support those voters. You won't hear another conversation like this from me ever again. And the reason you won't is because I work for the voters. That being said, when it comes down to the debt exclusion, that is the more palatable way to fund something of this nature. What happens with a debt exclusion is this is taken, that capital expenditure is taken outside of Proposition 2.5. In order to fund our town, we have to provide, when it comes time to fund our budgets for the town, to make the town work, we have a law called Proposition 2.5. Proposition 2.5 requires the town to stay within 2.5% of the previous budget. In other words, we can only go up 2.5% plus new growth. In this town, we have had absolutely flat growth in this town for the past 5 years. We have hovered right around $65,000 for new growth in a town that's worth $612 million. That's less than 1/10 of 1%. So we are, when it comes to growth in the town, we're as flat as it gets. We haven't gone down, that's a good sign. So it'll never, and when it comes down to new growth, new growth is not allowed to go below 0. So you'll never hear a number below that. You may see the value of the town go below the previous year. When it comes down to the lack of a debt exclusion, judging by the numbers that we're getting with relationship to this new school, it's going to amount to roughly $1 million a year for the next roughly 30 years. I'm assuming that's how long the bond is going to be, Tom? It's going to be a 30-year. So we have to come up with ways, we have to do this debt exclusion or whatever. If the debt exclusion doesn't go down, we, as a finance committee, our town manager, the select board, all the leaders of the various departments in the town, we have to look within our budgets and come up with ways to cut those budgets. That means services are going to go down. And they're going to go down pretty dramatically. Consider this. Our police department costs a little over $800,000 per year to run. That's just a pretty eye-opening example of what $1 million is. That's how big it can be. It will not happen that we're gonna close the police department. That's not gonna happen. The highway department budget is, I believe it's somewhere around $400,000. That's another department that would take a major hit. You think you're having trouble with potholes now? There's gonna be a lot of them. And these statements that I'm making, it's not an alarmist statement. These statements are facts. These are numbers that I spent the day today going over with our financial people within this town and getting to know what the ramifications are going to be. Even if we do a debt exclusion, we have to think about how much that's going to relate to people's houses. Presently, the average house in the town of Dalton pays roughly $4,000 a year for their taxes. And $300 more go toward their sewers. So you're looking at $4,300 a year. Then we put the 500 plus, we're going to say it's actually a little closer to 600 plus per house. That puts us a little over $5,000 a year for your average real estate tax bill. That's something we all need to very seriously think about it. To be honest with you, the people on this committee here have done an awesome job. They've done it better. They've been open. They've been honest. They've shown us everything. Believe it or not, I actually would like to see a new school. But can I afford a new school? If I can afford a $200,000 house, I'm not going to go and try to buy a $400,000 house. And I think that's kind of where a lot of us are at with this thing. And I hope everyone thinks about that, and I hope I was able to answer everyone's question with relationship to debt exclusion. If indeed it goes through, and if indeed we have to do something, I personally would work toward a debt exclusion. And just a little side thing, Proposition 2.5 override. If we do a Proposition 2.5 override, what that is a percentage of the budget. It opens it up from here to eternity. It opens us up for a higher amount of money that we can go and tax each and every year. Debt exclusion has a sunset date. It has it 30 years out from the time we take the bond. So I hope I was able to answer that question.
I have a question now.
Can you please explain debt exclusion?
Oh, please explain what the word debt
I mean, is
exclusion
that
is.
just something the town votes on then, so they can vote to sort of
Ab-
have money
absolutely.
versus a tax?
Absolutely, a debt exclusion. Okay, when it comes down to a debt exclusion, believe it or not, it's actually almost another vote on the school. Only in this case, if you don't do a debt exclusion for a capital expenditure, if we don't do that, what happens is, whether we like it or not, it ends up on the tax, what I call raise and appropriate. Raise and appropriate goes to the Proposition 2.5 overrides and things of that nature. So raise and appropriate, it comes out of our general budget. Many people will know it from it being called the general budget or the general fund. It comes out of that. So debt exclusion, we actually have, let me look here. And just to kind of let you know, the town of Dalton doesn't like debt exclusions. We've only had 2 debt exclusions, as far as I know, since 2009. And after 2009, we went almost 6 years before we could get a debt exclusion. Presently, we have the tear down of this building. That's debt excluded. And the reconstruction of Dalton Division Road is debt excluded. Those are the only 2 we've had since 2009. It's not very not a very good track record for debt exclusion.
Could you explain what?
Just what's the definition?
Well, it raises tax. Oh, okay. It does indeed raise taxes. You're still going to pay more money for your taxes. Only it's outside what it's basically it's outside what the general budget is. So in other words, you're gonna pay the taxes. It's not, I guess, a free ride, I suppose. Maybe, wasn't thinking, I'm trying to think of what we're thinking to call it.
Is it just like, instead of putting it under the taxes, as in, you just put it under debt exclusion?
No, actually, it's still, believe it or not, it's still taxes. It's still taxes, it's still money spent for and by the town and by the school. That's what it is. That's the reality, is that it is a tax, you still have to pay it. And this, it has a time limit on it. That was the point of the discussion.
All right, Bill, I've got some more questions here I just have to ask. And yeah, because I think the other questions are gonna double up and piggyback as I'm reading on. One was just a question, and Tom knew the answer to this, so this will be kind of a quickie. How much money and when will they give it to you, will Dalton receive? From the School Building Association, do you know how much money they give towards a new school? I think that's what they were asking you, how much?
I think $43 million, wait a minute, sorry, $31 million is the reimbursement rate, the reimbursement amount. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that was the question basically, I just didn't know.
It's 43% of the bill. Just over 31 million is the reimbursement rate projected. All these figures can change a little bit between now and.
The next questions are a little tricky. We'll try to explain them. We can also stay, for those who need to stay later, to explain more definitions and get down to it. This goes to taxes. Bill, are you prepared? How is the town going to handle a new high school and 10% of approximately $61 million for the Pittsfield sewer upgrades? Yeah, I know, isn't that ooh. Be afraid, Bill, be very, very afraid.
That's actually kind of a good question.
And with that, by the way, it also asks, how much is my tax bill going up with this?
That's an even better question. When it comes down to that, I've prepared for it again. When it comes down to that, the town of Dalton has some projects that are sitting in front of us that are rather substantial. And the sewer updates in the city of Pittsfield, we're going to get that bill, we cut a check. We don't get a choice. Not like we do with the school. It's because you know what flows downhill. And they happen to be the lowest spot. So they're...
Just to interject there, I think that he's incorrect with the number. It's 19.2% of 61.4 million. We owe the city of Pittsfield $11.6 million. If I'm incorrect, please correct us.
I'd like to address that. Actually, I was going to address that. When it comes down to the Pittsfield sewer that we have that's coming to us, whether we like it or not, the EPA has mandated that the city of Pittsfield does that upgrade. You've read about it in the paper. Everyone hopefully knows about it. If you don't, come and see me after. I'm going to be here for a little bit after. But when it comes down to that project, it's around $61 million. We've been watching this closely. Of that $61 million, the town of Dalton, and this is being mandated by the EPA again, we are responsible for 10% of that, which calculates to roughly $7 million. There's probably going to have to be some creative, I suppose, accounting, for lack of a better thing to call it, to make it happen, because we don't know how the city of Pittsfield is going to bond to get the work done. My opinion, because the town of Dalton has a better bond rating, it would be good if the city of Pittsfield, or the honorable mayor of the city of Pittsfield, would give us a bill for what we owe, and we can go out and do a debt exclusion, saving ourselves a rather substantial amount of money and get the job done for less. But we don't know if we're going to be afforded that ability to do that or not. That's kind of the big cloud that is kind of hanging over the town. The price for that comes from your sewer user fees. That would not come out of your regular general fees, or what you're paying for your town government and getting your roads plowed. That actually comes, we did many years ago, we went to sewer user fees instead, so that we can make sure that the sewer systems are working. We also have many problems presently with the sewers within the infrastructure within the town. And we have one of those coming up, and we have no idea how much that's going to be. We have absolutely, I think, let's see, I think we've got, right now, we're planning, right now we've set aside $120,000 for that, and I believe we're taking that out of sewer stabilization, I think. So,
Tom?
that thing's big, and we
Are
need
you
to
Bill?
know.
Bill, I've got some more questions. Keep standing up because I've given Tom 2 questions that are really Tom questions to answer. But while we're right here, we're getting Bill on money. Are you ready, Bill? These 4 questions sort of overlap, and I think they hit to the heart of the question that's on everyone's mind. The first says, I agree we need a new school, but why does a new school cost that amount of money when there's only 500 children? And maybe a lot of us can't pay because we're elderly. What happens to the senior population if they are alone and they are on a fixed income? And who will pay the balance of 30-year loans if there's the further loss of tax-paying households in Dalton and these other towns? And last but not least, to really burden you down, if my property value increases, will the amount I have to pay for a school also increase? So let me give you these 4 questions because I think everyone's talking fixed income, how are you going to pay? I think if you could hit those, because they kind of overlap.
Well, when it comes down to, I also, because I own a business in town, and it relates to real estate, one of the subjects that comes up is we have a wonderful school system, and that's why people come to the town of Dalton. That's one of the many reasons. But what's going to happen, one of the concerns they all have is the taxes. And they do indeed get sticker shock when they get their tax bill, because I get phone calls. Because they find out that I'm on the finance committee. So here comes phone calls, I get my number. So when it comes down to the taxes, and if you're on a fixed income, something that we are seeing within the town right now, and this is extremely unfortunate, we are seeing houses going into tax title. Tax title is unpaid taxes. It's an extremely sad event. And we don't, as a town, we don't like to see that. And one of the hardest parts about it is it devalues the people's homes within the town. So the question lies back to the school. If indeed we do build a new school and people decide they can't afford it and they move out, and people wanting to come to Dalton can't afford to come to Dalton, how then do we pay for the school? The people that are here, the taxes rise. That's what happens. It all goes, if you recall that $612 million number that I gave you, that's the actual value of all of the properties that are within the borders of the town of Dalton. If that number begins to go down, the cost to each and every person goes, or each and every property climbs. So it's not a very pretty scene if that all takes place. I hope to heavens it doesn't, but unfortunately, what I'm hearing from people I speak to, people I work with, on a relatively close to daily basis, I don't know. One other thing, that the kind of the silent group in all of this are the few businesses that we do indeed have in this town. They are taxed at a higher rate. they have a very small voice in this. The people have the larger voice. When it comes down to that, these businesses are going to have to raise their rates. The people that own properties are going to have to raise their rents. Are their tenants going to want to stay here, or are they going to want to go someplace else? Those are the questions that we all need to ask ourselves. This increase for this school is a get your attention number. And I think I've answered these questions pretty readily. And again, if you have other questions, stop and see me after. I'll be more than glad to answer what I can.
The next questions are going to Tom. I do have one suggestion, and I don't know about, you're talking about growth. Have any of you been down to South County this past month? Well, I drove down with my mother. I like Catherine's chocolates, hence why I'm probably overweight. But I got there, and outside there was a building, right before the McDonald's called Trinity. And it kind of looked like the church. And I saw all these people, and I'm talking blocks and blocks in the winter cold. And I literally thought Smitty had died. And I thought it was his wake, and I turned to my mother and I said, Ma, I haven't been reading, did Smitty die? She says, no, but we pull into McDonald's for the coffee. And I said to the kid, I said, what's over there? And he turns out the New Yorkers and Connecticut people coming in to buy their marijuana. So, believe it or not, around the building and out as far as the eye can see, so Smitty is alive for everyone. But the point is, so I knew the cop that was standing there, and I said to him, how is it doing here? He says, cash only. I said, well, that's good. How much do you think they're making? He says, I was talking to the guy. He says they're averaging almost $1 million a day, and every $3 million, they're turning 30,000 over to Great Barrington. I said to the kid at McDonald's, I said, do you mind that? And the little kid looked at me and said, yeah. He goes, that's how come I have a job. They have the munchies afterwards. You want growth, go down to South County and see how it's working out. But he said the majority are New Yorkers and Connecticut people, even though they're not supposed to bring it over. So, just a thought. Long live Cheech and Chong. All right. These questions go for Tom. Tom, given the age of Wacona, what actual building repairs, which you talked about, have to be done? But I think the next question, did they say the new building will be open space classrooms? Some of it. So the question is this, and if you don't know what it is, open space classroom are my concerns. Kids did not do well with them in the 60s. I taught in an open space classroom in Springfield. They have no walls. What it is, it's a partition between classrooms. And it is lovely if you have children who sit like this. But when you have children who are hyperactive, have special needs, who've never heard the word no except when they're in school, it can be a nightmare. And learning doesn't take place. And I'll actually tell you, I was hired by Holyoke at one point to be the coach to keep teachers in the classroom because they were walking out for their own mental sanity. So, if you look too at Pittsfield statistics, the one school that does have open classrooms, one of the least successful. However, it doesn't mean all of the rooms are going to be open classroom. Is that correct? I'm going to leave this up to Tom. Just put the teachers you don't like in the open classrooms.
Well, Bill gave a doomsday scenario. I'm not mocking it. I just thought of a solution. We all quit our jobs and start selling, you know what?
Yeah.
Make a lot of money. Turn it over to their town, and Bill will be singing a different tune.
But promise me we're going to call it Smitty's.
The question I had is,
About open classrooms.
Yeah, I want to do these.
Oh, sorry.
Some of the, I don't do that. Some of the specific things that I did allude to, it'll take 5 seconds here. The roof, building envelope, HVAC system, electrical, sprinkler, plumbing, accessories, hazard materials, site work, miscellaneous related work, soft costs, $45.6 million, and I gotta stress again, this is just basic infrastructure. This isn't doing anything to make it to rehab, this is fixing. This is fixing. And by the way, speaking of maintenance, we picked up 1 or 2
They
points.
can't hear you.
Sorry about that. We picked up 1 or 2 points in the reimbursement rate just recently, when the school building authority was looking at our numbers. February 14th, the Friday, to finalize them. Those are the numbers we're going with now. They gave us 1 to 2 points more, whole numbers, and reimbursement rate for our maintenance plan. That doesn't mean that it doesn't undo this stuff, but considering the building, maintenance was praised, and we're getting a reward for that. On the open classroom, well, there's some horror stories on the open classroom. It wasn't just the 60s. Drury built their first one up on the hill open classroom, a disaster. Hate to pick on Drury, good people, they fixed it, and they enclosed it. Still didn't work as good as they wanted, so they went farther up the hill and they built another one. Now, the open classroom design might not work if you use that lecture system and you can hear what's going on all around you from other rooms. The whole idea of this educational plan is to work in groups, and individual group, of course, but to have an organization where the teachers are moving from group to group with a lot of interaction and other places for kids to go for specific types of work. The teachers are trying that very successfully at Wacona now in a school that's not designed for it. It's difficult, but it can be done. And the faculty, by the way, at Wacona, that does an outstanding job, has bought into this ed plan wholeheartedly. They believe that this can work. Again, they're doing a lot of it now, but it would be a lot better and more efficiently done if we had a school designed for that.
Are any of the other schools in Berkshire County doing that now?
Well, there's, Ms. Manning just mentioned a few, and some places there's not good results. Depends on how it's controlled.
Good results.
Yeah.
Do we have any successful schools doing it?
I can't say the one I talked about, Harena, was a level 4, level 5 school in Springfield. And although it was open planned, we brought it up to level 3. But what it took were a lot of teachers with a lot of stamina who believe in children, believe all children can learn, and we worked together as a team. And that meant we stayed some nights till 6 o'clock and gave up our Saturdays. If you do not have a committed faculty, you will not have those results. But I truly believe in a lot of the children, and I was the one who taught the games and the children who didn't speak English. And I had to love them, because otherwise, I would have been gone. So that's what you really do need.
I'll give you an example. A couple of weeks ago, I subbed in the science department. One lab, we've already alluded to that. A physics class was in there. A biology class was in that same lab. A lot of us are familiar with it, because you went there and you used it. And a biology class came into the lab. 3 teachers. And I observed the whole thing. I was one of the 3 teachers, albeit a sub. And those kids worked with a lot of happiness, interaction. They were communicating, collaborating. It was creative work. They were doing it because the teachers had to organize it so. And that is an open lab with just the walls around it, 4 doorways going into that lab, all up open, so many kids going out into the hall and completing some of their work, working collaboratively, and communicating very well with the teachers moving around. The highlight of some of this stuff is that teachers can move around. They get a lot more exercise than standing behind a desk.
And with that said, I would tell you, 10 teachers on their feet are worth not 1 in their seat. Because in this model, they do have to monitor the kids. They can't be hiding in a seat, doing nothing, reading a newspaper. You are on your feet and you're earning your paycheck. So that is an advantage. But I do have another question for Tom, because he did get shorted a little on time. We have heard from the voters, from the taxpayers, we've heard from the building concerns, yet we have not heard from the clients, who are the children. How would the children benefit from a new building?
Very good question.
But you get 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Come on, Don.
All right, well, let's see what I can do.
Just to be
that.
fair to the client.
You're right. Okay.
I won't,
It's gonna read to you.
because the last 2 questions are going to Bill. from Henry Rose and Angela Rose, who are gonna read them themselves.
We have two students on the school building committee, and they're excellent contributors. Please bear with me. It's important to reiterate that the 1961 version of Wacona was built to have students sit, listen, and comply. It's a collection of boxes that's not intended to have students or staff work with one another. It's a very industrial revolution concept. The new Wacona will be built to suit the changing needs of education and the world of work. Now that we are 2 decades into the 21st century, we are required to teach the 4 C's of 21st century learning: critical thinking, communication, creativity, collaboration. This is the focus of the trades, all business and industry, obviously, and colleges too. The new learning spaces will adapt to those needs with flexible space, flexible furniture pull-out, and collaborative nooks as well. The highlights of the new spaces include a bigger gym that is actually up to state standards, underscore actually up to state standards, with corresponding phys ed and athletic spaces to match the diversifying needs of our phys ed curriculum. And those kids with special needs will hopefully have more space, more equipment and opportunity. 5 science classrooms, each outfitted with a lab. Old Wacona has one, as you know. A state-of-the-art auditorium. Again, more and improved spaces for the fine and performing arts. Folks, the stuff that goes on in the auditorium is a lot more advanced than it was when we were in high school. We need the auditorium. A student support center to meet the educational, physical, and mental health needs of our students. More privacy, meeting space. If you saw the number of kids with special needs, the old way of getting a pass, going down, coming back, everybody knows your problem. There's no privacy. No privacy in that building to meet the minor needs of students. In 1961 it was, but it doesn't do that anymore. Appropriately proportional and placed sped spaces, again, within the general education population. This design, by the way, I have a footnote here, resulted in an accommodation letter to Superintendent Caston just last week, citing the emphasis on sped space in the new design. All right, list of technology courses currently going on in the new school, a couple new ones: robotics, video game design, computer programming, computer building and repair, computer applications, web design, principles of engineering 1 and 2, computer-aided drafting and 3D printing, construction technology, and personal money management, marketing, entrepreneurship, accounting 1, 2, and 3. Not bad, not a bad plan. This is a 21st century plan, and the Mass School Building Authority insists you come up with this plan and design your school around it. Again, form follows function. It works, but you got to have the faculty endorse it. Our faculty has endorsed it.
No problem. There are 3 things I would like to just indicate that Tom touched on for your information. First, last weekend I was down at UMass Boston School of Management, and they literally said 80% of the jobs projected for 2035 are not in existence today. So the fact that they are preparing your children with the robotics and the computers is excellent. As for the SPED space, a lot of what I do is ELL SPED type compliance. Just so you know, things have changed, and you are held liable. In 1974, the SPED laws changed, and right now there's a thing called IDEA, and what it says is every child is entitled to a free and appropriate education, and that expense is not an option. Your school district cannot say it's too expensive. So you could actually have a family come in and take your whole district to task through the Bureaus of Special Education Appeals, and you could be in very serious trouble. And at least if you have these bedrooms, you're protected. And further with that said, a teacher, let's say you have a student right now, kid's got ADHD, person goes, will you pay attention? That is absolutely not in compliance. It's called FERPA, which is the Federal Education Rights Act, or Privacy Act. You cannot out a child, you cannot ask a child, no teacher can say, hey, why are you on your meds? Not allowed. Everything has changed. So you are looking at litigation, which I think the new building, from what I'm hearing, covers in the health stuff. This is something, if you have a child that is special ed, ELL, I would say, subgroup population. Just keep these things in mind. From what I did here at the school is in compliance, the new one. All right, but now, Bill, we're gonna end with you. We have two people who've asked to read their own cards. Oh, Bill, would you like to? Please. I don't know what your town rider is if you get sued, so you may want to talk about that. No, because this is a true thing. This happens all the time.
I don't, quite honestly, I don't know how to respond. To be
Well, you can
completely honest
respond
with
with
you.
Christine. That was a beautiful answer. No, in all honesty, if the town were to be sued because you did not put in the new school and these kids' rights are being violated, what's your rider? How are you protected by the town? The only thing that can't be sued is the school committee.
Right, well, first and foremost, and many people kind of need to understand this, is that, first off, public employees generally can't be sued for anything greater than $110,000. This I know because I was a former union representative. That's kind of a little bit of a history lesson there. But the towns, on the other hand, generally have deeper pockets. I don't know for sure what we have for liability insurance within the town. I'm sure our town manager knows that number, right, probably pretty close off the top of his head because he listens to it on a pretty regular basis. I do know we do have insurance for it. I do know that it would end up, I'm sure, covered. It would probably make our legal budget go right through the roof, and we might even have to go take some money out of reserve to go pay for it. But I have no idea where the liability lands with the relationship with special education and the relationship between the town and the school when it comes to education. I know the town's liability is covered. As for the school's liability, I'm not too sure on that.
I was just saying the school sounds like the new one's being covered. But right now, we have two questions for you. Is it Cheryl Rose and Henry Rose? Oh, Cheryl and Henry, come on up and ask your questions. They said you wanted to ask personally. Here you go. Do you need your cards back?
I've got it here. I think most of my questions were pretty well answered, but I want to pose this question. So if the school passes, but there's no 2.5 override, given that we have the cost of the old Elton High School coming down, the road construction project, the sewer, the water, are we running the risk that we might end up laying off teachers in order to have the school?
First and foremost, that question about the teachers, I don't know about, because the teachers, the school district provides us with a budget, and we pay for the budget. Or we try to approve the budget through town meeting. If the budget comes in too high, and we decide not to approve the budget for whatever reason, depending upon how many other towns are against it, the administration will have to go back and adjust their budget. If they had, and that would probably amount to teachers being laid off. But I can tell you for sure, there will be layoffs in the town of Dalton. I alluded to it before. If you don't like the potholes now, they're going to get worse if it comes down to that. Hopefully it won't come down to that. We all hope for that. There won't be a 24-hour police force in this town, by this town. We'll be covered by state police, like the town of Hinsdale is, because I believe they're a part-time force. Washington, of course, is a part-time force, so when it comes down to that kind of thing, that is indeed what's going to happen. We'll have to lay off police officers. We're going to have to lay off people in the town. In other words, right now we have, for our meetings, we have a recording secretary. Someone that is not a professional recording secretary will be keeping track of our notes. They'll have to probably be a member of the committee. We will tighten the belt. There's no doubt about it. Back many years ago, I think it was in the late 90s, we went from a 5-day-a-week town hall to a 4-day-a-week town hall. We laid off 4 highway department employees and 3 police officers. We went down to a part-time. We tried to close the library most of the week because we couldn't afford to run it, but then we ran the risk of losing all of the funding relating to the library, so we ended up keeping that open. So then we had to go find something else to cut from. And the list goes on, the list can go on and on and on. If it comes down to that, I will have to meet with the chairman of the select board and the town manager and the other people, and we will have to decide what gets cut. It's going to be a very ugly thing. I've been through it. I've been on this finance committee since the early 90s, and I've been through some pretty terrible times. I've been in those meetings till 11 o'clock at night trying to figure out who we're going to tell that they can't come to work tomorrow. And that's not a comfortable position to be in. It's not a position I want to be in. So I hope that we can all figure it out, whichever way, and I will not, for anyone, hold it against anyone, pro or con, when it comes to voting for this. It's vote your mind, and please make sure you vote.
And as far as the teachers, I can give you an idea, and I'm sure Tom will back this up, because it did happen to me one year, and it's called a RIF, and what happens in the contract when there's no money to pay, when the money does come or is found, you are given back your position. However, thanks to the state of Massachusetts, which has 100 million different unfunded mandates that schools have to do, what they start to do is by tenure, double licenses. For example, I have 4 different licenses plus an administrator's license. Then they start doubling you up. So that's what ends up happening. But usually the money does get found for a school district at some point for the teachers. Okay, yes, there's worse in the back.
I just want to ask a question. Is that scenario, if that exclusion is not passed, then you have to raise the appropriate, not if that exclusion is passed?
Can you reiterate the question?
Okay, yes, please.
The question was asked, if we have a debt exclusion, will that happen? If we have a debt exclusion, that will not happen, but your taxes will still go up. You need to keep that in mind. If indeed we vote for a debt, if we vote for the school, and then we vote for a debt exclusion, your taxes will go up. There's no way of avoiding that if we choose to build a new school. Just to let you know, that's not to say that we're going to escape an increase in taxes, because we are going to need to fix that school. From a building inspector or a home inspector's viewpoint, the one thing that completely surprised me about that school is there is no sprinkler system in that school. That disturbed me greatly. And I was pretty impressed with the price that we got on it. It was $1 million, and that's pretty cheap.
Right now, we have one last question,
Yeah,
yes?
I think we just need clarity on the debt exclusion versus Prop 2.5 versus tax levy, and the fact that if the school does not pass, we get another vote in 120 days. So if we miss the debt exclusion vote, or if we vote that down between those 2 points of period, and we vote for the new school the second time around, the only option is 2.5 or levy limit. So we need to really make sure that debt exclusion is very clear on the timing of this process for the community. I think it's a very confusing topic, and that process should be great.
Bill has just said they can do that. Do you think the town could put something maybe public explaining it for people clearly?
Okay, well, let's start down, I guess, the road that let's go down the path that we're going down to explain this. We're going to vote on April 6th for or against the school. Once we have voted for or against the school, say, for instance, we vote for the school or against the school, in 120 days, nothing else will happen. In 120 days, there will be a second vote for that school. I have no clue as to why that occurs in that manner.
That's state law.
And I don't, and to be honest with you, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to point fingers. None of that.
That's state law.
I'm assuming there's a requirement there.
Yep.
That's the only reason that I am even stating that. If indeed, after the 120 days,
It's 90 days. It's 90 days.
Oh, I'm going by.
90, okay, sure, yeah.
Okay, so it's 90 days. It's okay.
In 120 days.
Within 120. All right, it's all good. Clarity is good, everyone, please. Clarity is good. Now, after that period of time, going to the second vote, if indeed it is voted up at that second vote, if it's voted down, it's done. Back to square one. If it's voted up on the second vote, then us town fathers have to sit down and we have to decide, are we going to present a debt exclusion or are we going to present a Proposition 2.5 override? Those two things are very, very different. A debt exclusion, the most important difference is a debt exclusion goes away once the debt is satisfied. In other words, in this case, it would be $1 million a year for the next 30 years. And at the end of that 30 years, that $1 million a year goes away. But maintenance of school doesn't. Just want to add that. Then, and at that point, once the debt exclusion is approved, then we can go and get a bond and pay for it. That's kind of how it has to work. If we go to a Proposition 2.5 override, I can tell you it's highly unlikely that we're going to do that. One of those has not been approved in the entire state. But if indeed we do, a Proposition 2.5 override means that your taxes, the percentage that we're allowed to tax, will grow greater than 2.5% plus new growth. Does everyone understand the 2.5% plus new growth? Right? So if say for instance we choose to go up to, we'll use an example of 5%, you can be taxed up to 5% plus new growth each year. Is that kind of clear? Proposition 2.5, that's why Proposition 2.5 overrides generally don't fly very well. But the debt exclusions, people have, for the most part, bought into it because of the sunset, the ability for that debt to sunset.
And debt exclusions are usually in town hall or our town meetings, which is, I think, in May.
Right.
So I'm thinking about the timeline between that vote and within 90 days.
We would probably have a special town meeting for that. That would take, because of the timing, and the debt exclusion will come before the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee will review it. We'll vote yea or nay. Then I'll present it at the special town meeting. If it's approved at the special town meeting, I don't believe it has to go back in front of the people. Again, I can't say for sure in a ballot vote, unless, of course, it's petitioned to be a ballot vote. I don't think it needs to.
So the funding mechanism will follow the vote.
Absolutely. The funding mechanisms will take place once if the new school is approved, then we have to start on the funding mechanisms. Okay, is that clear?
It is 7:30, and we promised we would bring you home at that time, but I would like to first of all thank every one of you. This could have been very ugly, and you have all been very professional, personable, and very thoughtful and respectful of each other, and I want to thank you as an audience. But I really want to thank Tom and Bill, because Tom and Bill, you know, this is a hard thing to stick your neck out in the line. So I'd like to end the evening giving them each a minute or two to please give their last thoughts to you. And the last thing after that, I'm going to put Tom on this side, Bill on this side, and then you can nab them for your own personal questions if you were too shy during the talk too, and you have your own personal things. Again, thank you. My name's Chris Canning. I will also be here. If you have education questions, I cannot answer tax questions. Okay? I would like to be Hewitt, but not happening for me. Okay, so let me end with Tom giving 2 minutes of your final thoughts. And also, let's thank Tom tonight for coming out.
Christine, I really appreciate it. Before my 2 minutes start, is there a tax relief option for property owners, for senior citizens that there any special instructions that could go out to
Well,
remind people of what to do?
you have to visit the assessor's office. And once you, as a matter of fact, the forms for it, the forms for that kind of an abatement may even be available online. To go on the Dalton, I can't remember the Dalton.org website. Yeah, I know it's mass.
So Tom, give us your last thoughts. Why should we have a new school?
I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and I hope that, in all due respect to everything Bill said, I hope that we can't use the schools as the cause of any doomsday scenario. We've been through this drill before, and we've got to think this whole thing out before we cast that ballot. And there's been so much misinformation going around, although it has been subsiding. I think it would do everybody jurisdiction, if you will, to make sure before you vote that you understand the situation that you're voting for or against. To say that it's not going to be a sacrifice that everybody is ridiculous. So please give that a thought. Our grandparents and some of us, our parents, might not have been in the straits that we're in good-wise, and they felt that it was time to go regional and vote in that new school. But I would like to thank Bill for he did his homework, and this isn't easy to come and be the chair of the finance committee. There's no question about that. I've got a lot of respect for the position. He's not been doing it for a couple of weeks. He's been doing it for a while. Christine did a great job, and I think that we vetted things out today. I don't have anything else to say other than I really appreciate your attendance, and maybe we should have done that just a few other times, but we did it. And thanks to Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly Pizzey, everyone, she put all of this.
John White deserves some of this applause for helping organize this stuff. Thank you, John.
Tom, thank you very much. And now Bill, look at Bill smiling now, this is good. All right, Bill, first of all, let's thank Bill for coming out.
Thank you everyone for coming out. It's good to see, to be honest with you, it's really good to see everyone here. And I want to thank especially the committee that works with me, the Finance Committee. They presently are all sitting here tonight and listening to this and trying, because on the 20th, we are going to take this question up within the committee. So prepare yourselves for an answer from this committee as to what we think this should be, what should happen with this school, and what our hopes and aspirations are for this town. We will be getting a presentation from the school. I'm kind of ruling with a bit of an iron fist that they'll be allowed 20 minutes they'll be allowed 20 minutes for a presentation, and then I'm going to allow a half an hour for questions from my committee only. And the reason for that is we still have a lot of work to do to get our budgets completed for this year. It's going to be one of our regular meetings. We're going to build this right into it. And we're also going to be looking at the school operating budget that night as well. So we have a lot of work to do that night. So I'm going to limit the comments, but please, we have the cable company here. They're going to be there taking our pictures through this thing. And I hope everyone on April 6th, I hope every single one of you and more of you get out there, vote. If you support it, talk to people about voting. If you don't support it, talk to people about voting. It doesn't matter to me, again, whether you vote up or you vote down. Just that you exercise the one thing that separates us from the rest of the world is we have the ability to go out and vote. Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. Have a nice night.